Photography Chat live stream where we talk about photography and catch up with the community. See how everybody's doing. I'm doing well, thanks. And I didn't have any specific topic today, so I'll let the audience drive the conversation today. So if you have any questions or want to talk about any particular topic, let me know, and we can all kind of weigh in together. Uh, excuse me. I'm a little exhausted because I've been doing a lot of uh, different things this week. Did a lot of photography and a lot of did some tutoring, so I was a lot of prep for doing some tutoring and stuff. But uh, and and then all the social things. So my batteries are really low today. Seems like that's been happening more often. But there's a lot of other things that come to mind. Um, David sent me a video this morning about forget his name now. Something Wong. Gary Wong. He's had a Micro Four Thirds channel for a long time, and I've never watched him really. I've seen the thumbnails time to time, but it looks like he primarily shoots with Panasonic cameras, Lumix. So that's probably why his thumbnails don't come up quite as often, and I don't really watch it because I'm primarily Olympus Arm System guy. Uh, but it was interesting. I mean, I the video was about uh, what Micro Four Thirds needs to do or why it's the time now for Micro Four Thirds. I forget the title exactly, but the basic premise was that being small, compact, lightweight allows you to make it sort of the everyday camera to capture moments in your life, the things that kind of matter. The pictures that we take of our family, friends, events and going on in our lives make Micro Four Thirds sort of the ideal camera system. It's going to give you better quality than, say, a cell phone. And again, going back to it's easy to carry because the camera bodies and the lens systems are generally smaller. So, and I don't disagree with any of that. But that's always been the case, right? And I don't know if that's going to drive business back to Micro Four Thirds, selling on those key points. Because really, when you talk about capturing moments in your life and, you know, family and friends and things, uh, really, the gear doesn't matter at all, right? It's the camera that you have with you, and that's going to be the cell phone most of the time, right? Unless you're really an enthusiast photographer and enjoy photography with a camera, most people they shop cell phones and they look for good cameras in them, and that's why that has become kind of a big deal. When phones are released, they talk about the camera specs and how many improvements they made and all the things you can do with it. So cell phone manufacturers kind of captured that market, and and I think for the most part, people don't really care about the ultimate image quality, right? The phones do more than good enough job to capture those kinds of things. So while I don't disagree with the video, I think it's I think the point is mitigated quite a bit by cell phones. Uh, having a small compact carry with you every day. It's a cell phone, basically. I rarely use my cell phone to capture uh, my family events. I always bring a camera with me, but I'm kind of an enthusiast, right? I like cameras and I like using a real camera, and that's where we need to be. So, uh, really, what has to happen, I think, is people need to look at. I think the camera market is generally not for the average consumer anymore. The camera market is for people that enjoy photography and want that sort of experience of using a real camera to capture moments and things, not people that are just want to capture moments. People that want to do it with a camera. Uh, I get it. People get disappointed with the images from their cell phones sometimes, so they go to a camera store, Best Buy, wherever, and they say, I want to capture better images. And then they get a real camera, whatever it may be, and they find that their images aren't any better a lot of the times, and they return it. And I see this quite often, and I hear it quite often when I'm at the camera store. People returning or trading cameras saying, I never use it. I just use my cell phone. Uh, so, the average person picking up a camera that doesn't know anything about photography, they just put it in P mode or whatever, and they want to try and take better pictures because of all the, you know, hype and everything online from influencers. They, they're not going to take better pictures with a real camera than they can with a cell phone, and they're not going to take it with them, etc. So I don't know. I don't think that in of itself is what's going to bring Michael Four Thirds back. It makes a lot of sense if cell phones didn't take pictures, then yeah, I think Michael Four Thirds would definitely have a much bigger market, and the compact camera market, the point and shoots wouldn't have gone away. But it's been completely replaced by cell phones for that kind of thing. Because cell phones do great video, they take great pictures, and they're with you all the time. So I don't see that happening in that sense. So I just want to talk about that. And then as always, I get great feedback on my channel from comments, but time to time I'll get one that's just I don't know what's wrong with people sometimes. It doesn't bother me anymore. It used to bother me a lot, uh, what people say, but you kind of come to as you get older, you get a little wiser, more experience. Some people just aren't going to change. Some people are purists and they don't want you to do any editing to the photo, just take it straight out of camera. Uh, Others say, okay, you can edit and make some corrections, straighten horizon, but don't do any kind of AI or brush out anything from the image. Leave things, whatever is in the frame, you leave it in the frame. So, photography is an art. You do whatever you want to your picture. It doesn't matter. Post process the heck out of it. Delete things if you want in picture, use AI. You know, all these things, it's your own personal choice. You do what you want to enjoy photography. Uh, if you don't want to do certain things, don't do it. If you think it it's not if you want to go for a very purist type image where you're just making some minor corrections to compensate for areas that the camera may be uh, not capable of capturing something the way you want it exactly, like very strong highlights, very high dynamic range scenes. You may want to balance the image a little with exposure, do a few local adjustments, and you're done, right? Uh, or, you want to go all out, right? You want to saturate some colors over here, shift the color over here, brush out that little, trash can in the corner, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. You just enjoy what you do and create things that you want to create. It's your vision. So, uh, yeah, when I get comments about, that, and I could be reading it wrong, but when I get comments like that, uh, I'm like, lighten up, man. It's just photography, right? It's a craft, it's an art. It's not, we're not documenting things. We're not documentary photographers like I don't know, it's probably still true where you couldn't change a single thing in the image. You had to submit exactly what the camera captured, right? Because I remember some case where some guy I forget what it was. It was some picture he submitted, and he changed one little thing, and the picture got rejected. And it was not even noticeable, right? But, uh, for whatever reason, um, I guess as a journalist, uh you don't wanna have any manipulation to the image. You wanna report or show exactly what the camera captured, and that's a whole different thing. And then there's all the way up to people that just write a prompt and create an image with AI, you know? Um, and that was the point I think Gary brought up, was about how people are looking for authenticity in their photography, and why photography will never go away. For me, yeah, it's like, s s so what if there's AI there? It doesn't matter to me that I can type in a prompt and get a really nice image from AI when, I enjoy the process. I enjoy the craft of, looking at a scene, composing it, and adjusting the exposures, maybe doing multiple exposures, maybe doing a panorama with multiple images. Like yesterday, I was messing around with infrared photography. I enjoy that process, right? I'm an enthusiast photographer. I enjoy the process, and of course, I enjoy the time going out with the photo club and spending, some time with other like-minded people, and uh, all of that is the whole experience of that sitting behind a keyboard and typing in something doesn't give me. But for other people, they enjoy, writing prompts and trying to tweak it to get what they want out of an image and create something using AI. That's perfectly fine. I doesn't matter to me. Now, the problem I think a lot of people have with AI is people are trying to pass off these images as if they created it, right? Like in photography, we create our images, and that there's so little, uh, and I don't want to discount the work that a lot of people have done with AI, but there's so little input in terms of the actual creation of the image relative to what you would have to do if you were to try to capture the image using a camera, right? But it's a different skill set altogether with AI. You really can't compare it. It's apples to oranges. It's very, very different process. Uh, so that said, I have to check my text messages during a stream because you never know. Uh, Audio is popping and clipping. Okay, it's odd. It shouldn't be, 'cause I'm using the right. Let me check some settings over here. That looks good. Turn that off. I don't know. Hopefully that helps. Uh, oh, maybe I see. I accidentally pushed this. How's that? Is that, no, 1 second. What is I can see it clipping. Testing, 1, 2, testing. No, Test, test, test. That, no. Okay, test, test. No. This is weird. It should not be clipping like this. Hmm. How about this one? No. Yeah, I can see I can see it clipping on this screen, but this screen is not clipping. So what's happening between these two? What if I turn this way down? Nope. How about this one? Nope, that's clipping too. What the heck? Stream mic output. Everything is the same here. I don't understand. How about this one? All right, so let me just talk for a second here and let me know if that sounds any better. Uh, if this is good now, okay. I don't know why that was clipping so bad. Because when I'm looking at it, now it looks okay, but not perfect. Sorry about that. Uh, okay, so I don't know if anybody heard anything I said in the last 5, 10 minutes. Holy crap, I've been on for 20 minutes almost. Ah, how's that possible? It feels like I've been on 5 minutes. Anyhow, uh, I don't even remember what I was talking about. I was talking about Gary Wong's video and dot dot dot. Well, let me just go to the chat section. We'll do that. So I see Henning's here, Darko's here. Good to see you. And Jude, David, good to see you, Marcia, Jeff, and so anyone in chat have an old DSLRs with CCD sensors? Yeah, I have a couple, and some point and shoots with CCDs. And then cool oh, okay. Yeah, the Nikon D80. So I have that here. I only took it out the one day to get a few shots. I haven't really messed with it since I put my, what is this, a 24 to 85. Uh, but this Nikon D80 has a 10 megapixel CCD sensor. I think it's the same sensor that's in my Pentax K10D. And unfortunately, my K10D has developed a really severe case of back focus. And the camera's so old now, I can't get to any of the software and software to correct it. And a, a D300, I'm not sure if that's CCD or not. It's probably not, because there was a transition from primarily CCD sensors to CMOS sensors. And the main thing driving that transition was really power consumption. CMOS sensors use a lot less energy than CCD sensors and were cheaper to make. Even though they were a little bit more complex in design, they were cheaper to make and use less power. But early on, there was a terrible performance difference. CCD sensors early on uh, had better performance in low light, more image uniformity. All say it's really technical and over my head, but they both capture light the same way, right? Photon or wavelength of light hits the cell, it measures that amount, and then converts that to digital. So you have an analog to digital converter, uh, and ultimately, I think the idea of CCD sensors create some sort of different look to the image. I'm not so sure about that. I think most of the colors and things that you see, the differences between CCD sensors and CMOS sensors, all has to do with the image processing in camera when they're converting it to a raw file. So, for example, the old K10D, there was an article in DP Review about how they really tried to mimic Kodak film color science in that when they were converting, all of that analog signal to digital. So I think most of the uh, color science or color differences that we see have to do with the color science and design of the camera after the fact. The CCD versus CMOS sensor in of itself, there's really not much difference in how they capture light. It's how it's converted to a digital signal that gets processed and converted to a raw file. Uh, that said, most of the cameras these days are designed to capture images, at least on the raw image, are designed to capture images as realistic as possible. They want to reproduce the colors as accurately as possible. And then, of course, there's some tweaks by each manufacturer to get their signature kind of look. But ultimately, it has nothing to do with the sensor, in my opinion. Uh, so I wouldn't put too much stock in, CMOS sensors versus CCD sensors. If you're post-processing your raw images, you can pretty much get any look that you want out of it. And if you like the straight out of camera look that one camera gives you over another, uh, it has a lot more to do with the design of the uh, or the color science that the engineers at the time went with versus the technology or the hardware of the camera itself. And so, yeah, I like the look of the CCD sensor cameras that I have. They have certain warmth to it. I can give you an example in my Flickr. Let's see. Let me do comparisons. So here on my Flickr page, I have a bunch of comparisons. Uh, Let me see if I can find the one. Like here's a comparison. Like the LX5 is a CCD sensor. The LX100 is a CMOS sensor. And there's so little difference here. I process both of these, of course, using DxO, but the differences are very, very, very subtle here. And granted, there's not a huge color palette here, right? Because Ellie's black and white. and then we have pretty much grays and whites. But you can see a little bit more warmth here. I don't know if that counts. Actually, this is an AI curtain that I put in. So AI put in a little bit warmer curtain here than it did over here. Uh, let's see. Here's two CCD sensors side by side. So I have the K10D back when the back focus was not a problem, versus the LX5. Both of these are CCD sensors. Both of them 10 megapixels. Just one is a 1/1.7 inch sensor. This is a APS-C size sensor. So much bigger sensor. Uh, let's see. Here we have. Let me go back. LX5, XZ2. All right, here's an example. The LX5 is a CCD sensor. The XZ2 is a CMOS sensor, and they're both very similar vintage, right? The XZ2 is a little bit newer, but yeah, the differences are very subtle. Just a little bit more saturation here on the LX5 in the greens than here on the XZ2. Uh, I'll go over here. Let me go all the way down. Okay. This here is an EM1 Mark III versus an E500. The E500 has a CCD sensor. And here the difference is a little bit more stark. There's definitely a lot more warmth here, right? So I think what I did was here, uh, yeah, this is a straight out of camera in the shade. So, okay, so this is in direct sun more or less. And there's definitely more warmth here with the E500 than the EM1 Mark III. And then going to here, this is when I took a picture in the shade, basically it was cloud cover. And in cloud cover, the EM1 Mark III actually looks a little bit warmer than the E500. And that's because of the way the camera calculated white balance, basically, right? Uh, and then this image here, I corrected for white balance on both images. And this is a comparison, the same thing, E500 versus the EM1 Mark III. And when I corrected for white balance, meaning, I put the eyedropper here on her forehead where she has white fur, you can see that the CCD image is definitely warmer and richer, um, versus the M1 Mark III. But all I have to do is edit the EM1 Mark III image a little bit. I can get virtually the same exact look out of either one. But there's definitely a richness here in the yellows because our eyes are a little bit more orange here than they are down here. Down here, they're a little bit more brown, this is actually more accurate. So you can definitely see they were going for a more filmic type color science in this one, with the warmer tones. And then down here, we're trying to get a little more realistic with a more modern camera like the EM1 Mark III, because her eyes are definitely more brown than they are like this orange color. If you can see that difference. So, like I was saying, and what is this one? This is, I matched the white balance on this one as well. And you can definitely see a little more warmth here. Just a tiny bit more shift in the yellows. So yeah, this it's all definitely has to do with basically the color science that they designed in the camera when they made it versus the more modern cameras, I think try to be a little bit more accurate. At least that's what I'm seeing. Uh, Let me see. There's a lot of feedback in here. I see Marco's here. David, good to see you guys. And yes, full auto JPEGs from basic camera without any knowledge are usually worse than phone outputs, because every skillet needs practice, but I still would buy and use an XZ3. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely consider it. And good morning, ATR Bear. And Olympus said a few years ago that the phone camera killed their sales. Yeah, killed a lot of people's, not just OM Systems, right? Or Olympus. And Eric, oh, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate the support. If you want to support the live streams that I do here, not just today, but I do them, several times a week. Uh, just become a member to support the work that I do here, trying to help the photography community. Uh, you know, this what makes it possible is you guys becoming members, making donations, and of course using any affiliate links I might have. I have all that stuff down below in the comment section of this video and live stream. And let's see, you got your debit card. That's funny. Uh, Even 100 years ago, Stalin did some heavy editing to remove Trotsky and other people from the group. Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Comments here about the sound. Hopefully, it's okay now. And journalism requires absolute credibility, personal work, and all restrictions are off. Do what makes you happy. Yep, that sums it up, right? Whatever makes you happy. It's not about what other people think about your photos because, oh my God, people are always asking me, why don't you submit your things to competitions and uh, there's this other club where you send your images in and they critique them. And truth be told, I don't really care what other people think about my images. If I win a contest or if somebody wants to critique my images, uh, fine. But it doesn't matter to me. What matters is if I like the image, right? And Peter says, read an article that mentioned the EM1X was originally destined to be medium format. Ever hear that? No, I never heard that. Never heard that. Uh, Given the very fluid design of the M1X, that would surprise me because they really did such a good job with that camera. I mean, it's big camera, so I'm not going to get it. Uh, I say that, but they're getting so cheap now. It might be just fun having one, but uh, I would be surprised because I think it's perfect the way it is. Micro Four Thirds sensor and all. And Larry says, "What is your favorite camera? Any thoughts on what camera to replace my M13 to satisfy my severe gas? You are the one we all should trust." Oh man, buying a camera I think is a very personal decision. I buy a lot of different cameras for a lot of different reasons, and for me, the OM3, this guy right here, this is the camera I want to take out all the time. I got my honking 12 to 40 on here because it's the only lens that would fit my infrared filters. But normally I have my kit lens on here, my 14 to 42. And this is a camera that would make a really nice upgrade to the M1 Mark III. If you like the styling, if you don't like the styling, if you like the more traditional uh, DSLR style, the OM1 Mark II would be an absolute upgrade in terms of features, but you have to need the features that the OM1 Mark II offers. and in particular the subject detect autofocusing, for birds, animals, and whatever else is in there is fabulous. That's something the M1 Mark III does not have, and it'll make a huge difference in your bird photography, pet photography, uh, cars, whatever it is. It'll make a big difference in sports action type where things are moving fast. I think the face and eye detect in the M1 Mark III is is excellent, and it's not any better really so much in the OM1 Mark II. It's a little better because they added something called human detect, where it's just going to focus on a person whether it sees the face or not. But if it sees a face, then it'll try and focus on the eye. So it's just a little better in that respect. But if people are facing you, I mean, don't take a picture of back of their head is facing you, right? You take a picture when they're looking at you. Uh, the M1 Mark III in that sense is fine. And in terms of image quality, I will give an edge to the OM1 Mark II over, say, the EM1 Mark III. Not so much in everyday type photos, even low light photos. There's not much difference in your average photo. Where the difference comes in is when you start pushing the camera to its limits. You're shooting at uh, extremely long exposures, or you're shooting very high ISO and it's underexposed and you push the image, 4 stops, right, in post-processing, there will be a little bit of a difference, a little bit of improvement with the newer sensor. Another key area that the OM1 Mark II and the OM3 have is, I would say, yeah, the menu system, right? The menu system's really nice. And I don't see a lot of difference from a practical standpoint for me, but for a lot of people, they like the new layout a lot more. And see, it's more intuitive and color coded with icons, et cetera, et cetera. So the menu system does make the user experience a little more fluid. And with the new CP button that they put like on the OM3 and even the OM5 Mark II, the CP button is a game changer for me. I access the computational features a lot more often now than I used to because I don't have to dive into the menu to get to it. But I would I would say unless you're really going to get into sports action type photography, birding and wildlife, there's not a lot of compelling reasons to move on to an OM1 Mark II. The OM3, on the other hand, is more of a lifestyle choice, right? It's because of just how the camera looks. So if you like how the camera looks, then this is a really, really nice upgrade. And I think the price point is very fair. So, and the EVF is a lot better on the OM1 Mark II than the OM3. I don't really see much difference in everyday shooting, but some people they're very sensitive to the EVF, right? It has to be, every megapixel counts. So we have a 2.36 megapixel OM3. The OM1 Mark II has the 5 point something megapixel. And some people are very sensitive to that. So that's something that I think you'd have to uh, try for yourself and see if it makes a difference. Um, but yeah, that's where I would go. I'd probably go, for me, it's going to be OM3. For you, it might be the OM1 Mark II. I think those are both awesome upgrades with the caveat, it's going to be in the areas of sports action wildlife and using the subject detect features. If you're not really using that, the M1 Mark III has pretty much does it all. Just like the OM5 Mark II. Those two cameras, they do everything that you need to do, sans the subject detect. And Plato's here. Good to see you. And let's see. Okay, so the audio seems okay. Let me just skim down, make sure the audio is still good. I don't see any other comments about the audio, so I guess we're good. Now, Rick says the D300 is a CMOS. Okay. And the D80 was the last CCD sensor, as far as I know, for Nikon, possibly. Um, Darko says CCD sensors were used a few more years by Mamiya on medium format. Okay. And Walter says the D200 was a CCD. Okay. And usually CCD sensor or the color signs behind it have more saturated color straight out of camera, although a color shift from blue to cyan. I see that a little bit. Yeah. I didn't have any images with blue in them on the examples I showed, but I do see that. I'm trying to recall my Pentax K10 when I was using it more often. I definitely saw a little bit more cyan in the skies and things. And is that warmth straight out of camera based on fixed or auto white balance? I was using probably auto white balance because I wanted to see what the white balance, how the camera sees white balance. And then I just corrected it in post processing as I showed, by putting the eyedropper on Ellie's forehead. That should have matched the white balance two cameras and mitigate any differences that way. Because even if I fix the white balance to 5,000 on multiple different cameras, I still get different white balances. Every camera interprets white balance hopefully as accurately as possible, but I do see differences. And that's why you always have to use, if you're very critical about white balance and color, you always have to use these things, right? These color cards where, you calibrate the camera color signs to be accurate as possible. I haven't tried like calibrating a CCD sensor to this and then calibrating my other CMOS sensors to this and then comparing. I would imagine they're still going to be identical sans saturation differences, right? But the color in of itself should be the same. And going to be setting up my camera on a tripod at my hummingbird feeders. Hopefully my remote works good. What about using the OM Share remote using the live view mode? Yeah, why not? I mean, I don't think you have access to a lot of the features that you would if you were actually just setting up the camera and using it yourself. And yeah, I don't see why not. That should work fine. I've never tried it though. I don't know what distance you are from your camera, if there's going to be some lag. But try it and see. I mean, that's the best way, right? And Walter's asking, does the camera firmware of the sensor affect the color temperature? I seriously doubt it. Um, I mean, I know that they can add color profiles via firmware, so that would imply they could change the color science of the JPEGs easily, right? Can they change the color science, meaning white balance and other things, on the raw image? That I don't know because I don't think they would go that far to do that unless there was a serious problem with the color straight out of camera, meaning the raw file uh, that users are reporting. But I think a raw file, it reports the sensor sends out, say, a signal of, say, 5. Okay, I'm just going to be arbitrary. Let's say one pixel sends out a signal and it's converted to a number 5. And that number 5 gets translated to a color, for example, right? Or a certain value of color. I don't know. I haven't seen it or heard about it, and it would be foolish to do that because a lot of people's workflow depend on, they calibrate their cameras a certain way. So if they change the color science at the pixel level, like at the raw level, that's going to mess up a lot of people's workflow, and they'd have to recalibrate everything from there. Yeah, I guess the question comes down to hardware versus firmware. Yeah. I mean, the hardware, like I said, I think, when I think of firmware, I think of more of the operating system of the camera, not so much the processing part of the camera. Uh, Much like in a computer, like a laptop has basic firmware to access memory and hard drives and keyboards and how everything, all the hardware works together. So it's more the operating of the hardware is what I think of as firmware. But the processing, that I don't consider really firmware. Uh, Processing is software side in the camera, and that they can certainly change. Wonder if the difference in the processing in true might make a difference in JPEG rendering, at least some level. Yeah. In addition to, well, my EM10, my EM10 Mark II was definitely a little bit warmer than my EM5 Mark II or any other Olympus camera using the same lens, right? Because lenses can shift the color a little bit as well, depending on the coatings and things like that. Uh, so there was definitely a different color science in the M10 Mark II versus some of the other cameras they produced since then. And Adam's here. Good. Good to see Adam. And have you looked much at video side of things on the new Owen other than the red box to indicate recording? Seems like they froze in time after the EM1 Mark III, which was excellent. Yeah. No, I don't spend much time with video. It's always an afterthought for me to record something in video. Uh, it's very rare I record video when I'm out in the field. And when I do, I'm usually just in program mode or aperture priority mode when I'm recording video, but usually it's just program mode. I just hit the red button. Which by default, if you're in a photo mode and you hit the red button, it defaults to program mode on your video. And when I try to go in and tweak things, say I want to record in 4K 60 with OM log 400, it's an afterthought, and I never end up doing anything with it. And could the camera maker have programmed the CCD sensor to look more like what we see? Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not. I mean, like I said, when I was reading the article about the K10D, they were very they made it very clear they were trying to mimic Kodak film. So if you take like the D80 and I compare it directly with my K10 in terms of color, I guarantee they're going to look very different, even though they're using the same sensor. And you have a nice documentary on YouTube talking about Kodak Olympus downfall was very interesting, especially the part about Olympus tax. Oh, not me, but someone has a video on that. But no, not me. I'm sure you didn't mean you as in me. You just meant like you as in the group. So I do my images for me, but share on Facebook. If I got comments, I take them with a grain of salt. Yeah. I mean, if I see a picture, whether I like it or not, I just say that's nice. You know, Uh, because they didn't ask me to critique the image. They're just sharing their image, and I'll say, "Oh, that's nice. It's a nice picture." Right? I mean, what else can you say? If somebody asks me to critique it, I can say, "Okay, well, this is very subjective, but this is what I would have done different." I do that every Friday on my photo editing streams. People send me their images to edit, and I don't critique them. I just tell them what I would have done differently or show them how I see the picture by editing it, right? But it's not a critique by any means. It's just simply my vision of what's in front of me, right? Documentary on YouTube is Kodak, Olympus, and Fujifilm: The Rise and Deep Fall of the Camera Industry. Okay, I'll have to check that out. The new menus have the hover and help. That is very nice upgrade. Most of the upgrades anymore are convenience and customization features, and I don't think that can be underestimated. Uh, the convenience of the CP button on the OM3 is huge for me. I mean, I use the word game changer, but for me it was. I wouldn't say it's a game changer in the photography industry or the camera industry, certainly not. But for me and my workflow, it definitely was a game changer for me because if I want to just flip over and do high res shot mode, or I want to go into HDR, I want to use an ND filter, I just push the CB button and dial it in. It's a much more fluid, more intuitive way to use the features without having to dive into a menu. And yeah, that was a big deal. And a lot of the updates, like you said, are those kinds of things, right? Like the OM5 Mark II, they put a CP button. All they did was reprogram the button to be CP. And someone made a comment about how they're a little upset how OM Systems has kind of abandoned the OM5 Mark I because particularly the CP button could easily be programmed, I think, into the OM5 Mark I. You don't have to go in and change the entire menu system to make it look like the new menu system. That might be a little more involved, maybe not, but certainly, adding in firmware a way to create a CP button on the OM5 Mark I would be awesome. And Seraphin says, I really, really wanted to love the OM3, but the low resolution viewfinder and side panels easily opening from just taking them out of the bag and walking around being reported killed it for me. Yeah. Yeah, and Seraphim makes some really good points, right? Uh, that it 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 helps if you can actually see and hold the camera in your hand, get feedback from other users. Like I remember him asking me specifically about uh, the side panels here last week, and for me, never been an issue, right? But I'm not using the camera the same way he would use it, or using the same bag or whatever it is he's taking it out of that's opening these doors, right? I'm using my bags, my lenses. I'm holding the camera my way, and I use the camera, the way I use the camera. And it just never occurred to me that those doors opening would be a problem because it's never happened to me. But I'm not Seraphin, right? I'm not Seraphin with Seraphin's bag, the way Seraphin handles the camera. I'm not. I'm a totally different person. So it's a very personal choice when it comes to a camera. So when people ask me what camera should I upgrade for, I can talk about some of the technical reasons you may want to upgrade, but ultimately it's always best to handle the camera and make sure it's right for you, right? And Jack says, Walter, I have a limit. Oh, that's for Walter, but I have mimicked the look of CCT with adjustments of sharpening, contrast, saturation, and standard mode, and come pretty close to CT look. but it could be a specific camera. And that's exactly the same challenge people have with trying to reproduce the film, right? So let's say I want to make a preset that reproduces, uh, I don't know, Kodachrome 64. I might be able to get one image to look exactly like Kodachrome, right? But to do it for the thousands of images I'm going to take over the year in different lighting conditions, different scenes, it's impossible. So all of these film presets and everything, they may get you started, but there's no substitute for film, right? Shooting in film. Uh, and trying to match two cameras exactly, shot to shot to shot, is virtually impossible unless you have a common denominator, right? Like I was showing the color card, where you calibrate things exactly using one of these. But then you'll get two. But yeah, if you try and tweak saturation or shift the white balance, sliders a little bit in camera, yeah, this photo is going to look exactly like, it's going to have a very, very similar look, if not exactly almost the same look as the other picture, two pictures side by side, but then take another picture in different lighting conditions. Let's say the picture you did it first time was in at sunrise. So you have very warm light, you have very warm reflections and color casts, and then take the same photo midday and apply the same corrections to that photo. I wouldn't, I would be surprised if they came out the same again. It would, that's going to be very, very difficult. I know that's virtually impossible to do with film because film has a different response to light uh, than CCD sensors. And thanks very much. Guess I will stay with the excellent EM1 Mark III or maybe the OM3 just for fun. Yeah, definitely. The OM3 has basically, it's basically my everyday camera now. Uh, the OM1 has always been sort of my workhorse camera. I use that on my photo jobs. Uh, but because it's just it has a better workflow for my professional work. Um, so Dark so what adventures have you been doing most in wildlife photography, backyard or travel to locations? Oh, I'd say mostly going out for wildlife. My backyard stuff I do time to time, like in the summer when it's a little warmer and I can sit out there longer. But in the wintertime, typically I go out more. So maybe 50-50. My backyard birding, I enjoy doing that. And, you set up a bird feeder and the birds come. And I have fun setting up different, sticks and branches around. It's all about the process, right? Like I'll put the sticks over here and I'll think, okay, now if I put the sticks here, the birds will be perched on it this way and they're going to fly in this direction into the light. And that's when I'm going to try and capture the bird, right? So I think about the organization of the backyard so that I can capture the best bird in flight image I can in different lighting situations. So I might say, okay, I'm going to set up the bird feeder over here. I'm going to set up the bird bath over here. And I'm going to do this. And in the mornings, the branches on this particular area is going to be better versus, in the evening, I want to use this set, or may want to move the branches over here. Stuff like that. It's just for fun. Uh, and wildlife is very random. You never know. You have to be prepared for anything around here. Wintertime is a little harder to do wildlife. Uh, the birds are, not around, but uh, let's see. And I assume I assume the firmware color science is fixed, but they could have changed color science baked into it when switching to CMOS. Well, I have no doubt that they had to rework the the color science going to a CMOS sensor because CMOS sensors early on, I mean, they were both invented back in the 60s, I think. They had CCD and CMOS really at about the same time, but at the time, CMOS sensors didn't perform anywhere near as well as CCD, and it was probably early 2000s where CMOS definitely was outperforming CCD in terms of, power consumption, low light performance, speed, all of these things, and cost, right? Cost went way down. So all of these things kind of drove um, the CCD sensor to kind of, not be mainstream in consumer cameras. And, there's certainly, um, if I recall, I haven't really looked into this in a long time, but CCD sensors are better for some applications still to this day. And, so you can't just rule out CCD sensors just because in our consumer cameras, the CMOS sensor is outperforming now in other applications, because there's differences between consumer cameras are designed specifically for visible light, right? Things we can see with our eyes. And but sensors are certainly more capable of capturing all wavelengths of light beyond visible light. And CD sensors are actually better at capturing uh, non-visible light in certain areas like UV and infrared. Uh, don't quote me on that, okay? But if I recall, there's still some very specific applications where CCD is the preferred sensor of choice because of that. And Seraphim says they had some cancellations in the price hike for the next batch of X100 uh, sixes cameras, so I ordered myself one coming in October. I'll keep the 28 millimeter converter on my X100V when my EI arrives. Okay. Hmm. The X100 VI or X106. Um, wow, that's it's just crazy how much these cameras that they're asking for these cameras these days. But that's interesting. I'm not following these tariffs and things like that so much. Rob, regarding the hummingbird shot, is it possible to get good shots extracted out of a video clip? I seriously doubt it. Uh, because you know the frame rate is only 60 frames per second at best, right? And the resolution is much lower on video. Even 4K video is only 4 megapixels, I think. So there's no way uh, you're going to get a better image from video clips than a 20 megapixel raw file. The other thing, and video clips are basically JPEGs, right? So there's not going to be a lot of latitude in editing, even if you had the same resolution, which you don't. So you're getting a quarter of the resolution or a fifth of the resolution, even in 4K, than you would a 20 megapixel sensor or 20 megapixel image. And you're getting, at best, a 10-bit uh, image to work with in terms of editing, right? So, yeah. I mean, the other challenge is when I mentioned the frame rate being at 60 frames per second, uh, That's faster than, say, the 50 frames per second we can do with continuous autofocus. But I don't know if in video, the continuous autofocus is gonna be as fast as it is in photo mode at 50 frames per second. So yeah, there's just way too much overhead in video in the processing in camera for it to work as well as, say, capturing the image, in a regular photo mode. And do you know if the slow-mo video for the OM3 can also be set for 10-bit? The 8-bit from the M5 Mark III that I had was very bad quality, like blotchy 720. Wow. Um, I don't know. I seriously doubt it, but I can check because I have an OM3. Give me a second. I'll let you know. So put the camera in the video mode and please rotate the dial. Okay. So I'm going to the menu. I'm going to change the video codec to H.265, which is the 10-bit. And you didn't specify 4K or whatever. So we'll start with full HD, 24p, 10-bit. Now, if I go into the control panel and click the info button, nope, doesn't change there. Okay, let's try H.264. Oh, crap. This one I have to put in S and Q mode. All right, so S and Q mode. Okay. So let me put it back in H.265. Let me try 4K. Yeah. So I'm in slow-mo right now, 10-bit video. I hit the record button now. It's recording. And if I play it back, yeah, it works actually. 10-bit video. Let me push play. Info. 4K 24p, 10-bit video. Yep. We both learned something new today. Like I said, I just never use video, but yeah, it does. Okay, let's see. Gotta drop out. Always enjoy these chats, Rob. Talk soon. Okay, cool. Yeah, Walter, we'll hope to see you again soon. Uh, so I've started playing with the DxO film packs. Is it really really nice that it has a randomizer button that lets you randomize some of the things like scratches, like, oh yeah, that helps. I don't use it very often, but when I do, yeah, it helps to kind of shift things around and see so that one, you can because sometimes you'll get a blotch or a scratch in an area that you don't want one. So you can hit that random button and it'll change everything. That's the main reason I use it. But the other thing is you don't get exactly the same looking image or the same look, image to image. So if you got 10 images and they all have the exact same scratch pattern, you're gonna say, well, that's not quite as interesting as being able to change it. Yep. So I lost a bit for an EM1 Mark II, but I would have needed lenses again for M43. Yeah, you're gonna have to start over, right? If you're completely out of M43 and you're happy with your Nikon stuff, I don't see a reason to go back. At this point, I'm heavily invested in Z and F Nikon, but would love Nikon to make a true rangefinder cam with an EVF, but sadly it will not happen. I seriously doubt it. Yeah. They may surprise us, but who knows? And what do you think about Indian wedding photography or Hindu wedding photography? I have no thoughts on it at all. I've never been to either one. Um, a better person to ask is probably like Jimmy Chang. He's he does weddings, right? Robin's done a few. I don't know if he's doing them now, but yeah, definitely Jimmy Chang is a better person to ask about that. And thanks for checking. Sure. Only took a second, right? Okay. I think I hit all of the chat and that's great. So let me share a few pictures here and that I did. I'm just going to go into my folder. Um, we'll just start with this one. And these are all on my Flickr page. Maybe I'll just go to my Flickr page. That'll be easier. But this is a little bit larger screen. Uh, oh, hold on. Let me let me check my Flickr page real quick because the Flickr page is a little bit easier in other ways. If I hit F11, that helps. Oh, I didn't post a lot of things here, but I'll start with this page. So I went out with my K3 monochrome camera and my OM3, and I did a couple of shots side by side. Uh, just out of curiosity, but I've talked about the OM3, I'm sorry, I've talked about the K3 monochrome and the tonality of having a true monochrome sensor. And there's a lot of images here that I can see it where there's a difference. Uh, in this one, you can definitely see the exposure is slightly different. The cameras expose the same scene slightly differently, but you can definitely see a little more dynamic range in the K3 monochrome in with respect to the where it goes from light to dark. Whereas the OM3, this is just a color image converted to monochrome, no other editing, and it's a little bit flatter, just a little bit flatter. It's not a completely fair test because I didn't set the camera manually uh, like I normally would when I'm doing a comparison. But even if I did, I guarantee, I have done it in the past, and this is very representative of the differences that I see between a monochrome sensor and a regular, Bayer sensor array, where there's just better tonality from dark to light. And these are full res images, so you can punch in if you want. But it's just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. Uh, okay, and here's the full res image of the one we just looked at from the K3. And these are barely cropped, if at all. Yeah, this one's not even cropped. This is just straight out of camera. Here's another good example from the K3, and I didn't do any editing to the K3 images other than maybe tilting the horizon or a slight crop, if any. And again, this is a good illustration of the kind of tones that you get out of a monochrome sensor. And this is really hard to duplicate in my at least in my own system cameras. Uh, Another example, straight out of camera, no editing. Yeah, this one's not cropped at all either. This is just strictly right out of camera. Here's another one. Um, Another one, very bright background. But when you like looking at the leaves, you can see all the different individual tones of each leaf. And then going back to where I focus, because that's a little bit out of focus. Uh, and the detail that it captures, people say that you get better resolution out of a monochrome sensor because it's not binning the pixels together for the demosaicing. Maybe, but you can definitely see some really fine details in this image. There's one of David. I just got him. Um, we went out yesterday shooting. Here's another one, very strong highlight here, completely blown out and clipped. But as soon as you get out of the clipping area, just the tonality, just wonderful. This one is a little bit lower key, darker image, but I think this is also an excellent representation of the tonality. If you look in the sky, it's darker here, then it just ever so gradually gets brighter. And then we have some very nice, dark black tones in here. And this is straight out of camera, no editing, and no cropping or tilting. I think this one, let me see. Yeah, again, 4128 by 6192. So this is just no cropping, nothing. Straight out of the camera. And I just love the tones that I'm getting out of it. Here's a picture from the Nikon D80 of Ellie, of course. Now, this this image here looks a little bit on the cool side, not quite as warm. But if you look at her face and the fur here, then you look at the fur back here, you notice that it kind of transitions from a cooler color to a warmer tone. And that's because I was using flash. I was using my little bitty uh, flash that I love now, my Media Light F3. So I was using a little bit of flash. So that's why we're seeing sort of a slight shift. It's kind of warm up here, and it's a little bit cooler here. Same thing with this image. It's a little bit cooler in the front and a little bit warmer towards the back. So we're not seeing the super warm tones that we saw before, like with the other cameras. And I hardly used the Nikon D80 when I got it because I went right to a Nikon D7100 and then I never used the D80. But there's those images. So I don't know. What did you guys think? They're on my Flickr page. I thought I I just I just love that monochrome sensor. It's very subtle. And I've said this over and over again. In a blind test, if you showed me a black and white image, there's no way I would be able to tell the difference between a monochrome sensor and converted color sensor. But when I put them side by side, like I tried to do in the first image, I can see a difference, right? I can see a difference. And does Nick help with a Bayer sensor? No. And Nick collection is strictly uh, post processing. Like it doesn't demosaic the raw image. So it's after the image has been demosaicked. That's that's what Nick collection does. Is it works with the raw image after it's been demosaicked. Uh, if you have to get something like DxO Pure Raw or Photolab that has its own demosaicing, right, that will make a difference in how the image is processed. Because you can see a difference between, say, Capture One, Lightroom, DxO. All of these raw editing softwares all have their own demosaicing algorithm. And in my opinion, DxO does it best. But that's my opinion. It's not everyone's. And Henning says Nick functions work on images, not raw files, so sensor doesn't come into count. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I just said, right? Um, okay, let's look at a couple other images. And this time, since I didn't post them, and here I'm just kind of experimenting with infrared. I still don't have it down yet, but I like the reflections and flare that I got on this image. Uh, didn't get a lot of likes on Instagram, but I don't care about that. I really like this image personally, and I'm getting double reflections on the flare because I was using a polarizer, ND filter, and a uh, infrared filter. Not my first choice, okay? I had to do it because I could not find my step ring to put the infrared filter directly onto my lens. So my ND polarizer filter, it screws on at 62 millimeters, but it has a 67 millimeter thread on the front. So that's the only way I was able to get the infrared filter on. Uh, but that's why I got sort of this double reflection here. You can see the reflections kind of bouncing off all the different lenses. Here's a processed image of infrared. I was using a 760 nanometer infrared filter, and so that allowed some visible light in or some colors in for me to try to separate them a little bit. And this is okay. Like I said, this is passing through a polarizer and an ND filter before it gets to the lens. So the image quality is not not as good as, say, if I'd been able to put the infrared filter directly onto the lens. But I found my step ring this morning, so I'm going to go back out and try some more. Another infrared image and same processing. Basically, I inverted the red and blue channels and then adjusted white balance, and this is what I came up with. Not great, but it's like I said, I'm just getting started with it, so I'm trying to see what I can do. This one came out a little better because the reflections weren't quite as harsh because I was standing in the shade. So I didn't get the flaring and reflections quite as bad, but I'm still seeing some minor artifacts that I don't think I would get if I was shooting straight up without the polarizer, because the polarizer and ND filter is going to have an effect on the infrared wavelength. Some, and probably not in a good way, but we'll see. Like I said, I'm just getting started here. And this same processing, inverted red and blue channels, and then adjusted white balance. Uh, okay, here's a wildlife shot. This is a 300 millimeter f4 OM3 with a teleconverter, 1.4 teleconverter, and then processed in DxO. And it's just the amount of detail you can squeeze out with this lens and with DxO. It's just crazy. Um, but there's a blue heron just sitting on a tree. This was this was this is a great white egret, I think is what it's called, and in flight. I was not prepared to take this image, so my shutter speed was way too slow, 1/800th of a second. And so I got a tiny bit of motion blur in this image that I corrected for using Topaz. But ultimately, this image came out okay. But you know, I wasn't ready for it. I was taking pictures of a bumblebee or something, and then this bird flies out of nowhere. David's like, heads up," or whatever, and I just spun the camera around and got this shot. Okay, this image here, this image, I'm experimenting. Well, anyway, this friend of mine here, she asked me to help her with a photo project she's working on, and what she wants is like very long shadows in a tunnel. So I brought my flash. So the light here is actually not the sun. The light here is actually my flash firing. And this image came out okay, but it has some major problems with the effect that we're going for. I We certainly got the long shadow. We got good lighting in the tunnel, but I'm wondering if anybody can see the big problem with this image. So I'm gonna come back. I want you to look at this image, and I'll come back to the chat. So just take a second to look at this image and see if you can see what the problem is. Um, and I'm not going to give any hints because it should be pretty obvious. But if it's not obvious, for those of you that it's not obvious, I'll let you know. But I didn't pick up on it until I started post processing the images, and I'm like, crap, this really sucks. We're not going to be able to use this image. And it's because of a major flaw. There's a major flaw in this image. The only hint I'll drop, it's not in the post processing. Okay, it's with the actual image itself. There's a big problem. Okay. Uh, Here is a basically straight out of camera image using monochrome profile, I think number two, because there's some grain in it. Maybe yeah, I think it's monochrome profile two with high grain. And I thought this came out well. It's the OM3 with the 14 to 42 kit lens. Again, we were trying different things with lights and shadows. So we went out to the fort because I knew that at the fort they had, you know, lots of opportunities to get shots like this with tunnels and doors leading into very dark rooms, but also leading outside where it's very bright. Yeah, but this I didn't do any editing other than straightening the horizon a little bit because I it was a little crooked. This one here also I didn't do any editing. This is pretty much straight out of camera. And I got exactly what I wanted out of this. This image is really good, actually. Um, this does not have the same problems as the tunnel picture that we took earlier. I'm curious if you guys can see, and I'll put them side by side. I'm just curious if you guys can see why this one I think is better than the other one. Another straight out of camera. Uh, this one, maybe a slight horizon correction, but no editing otherwise. Monochrome profile with grain and OM3 and a kit lens, 14 to 42 kit lens. Oh, that's her. That's me. And yeah, so I asked her to take a couple of pictures of me for the channel. And then one more here. This is the same picture, but I converted it to color. I may have done a little bit of editing to this one. I don't remember, but not much, if any. But this is the color version of that tunnel. So let me come back to, we'll just compare the color with the color. So there's a pretty big difference between these two images. Um, so let me check the comments now and see if you guys can see the difference. So I found um, infrared filter, but I think it's a high nanometer number. Yeah, the higher the number, like if it's a 950 or something, you probably want to do black and white uh, images because not much color's coming through at those higher numbers. And let's see, what nanometer filter? Those images were with a 760. If you want a lot of color in your infrared images, you want to go down to like 590. 590 is kind of really a lot of color, but it still inverts all the colors weird, right? They released the GR4 for review. It's kind of redundant now with the Q3, but still cool. Yep. I did watch a little bit of one and then I clicked away from it. GR4 just doesn't interest me that much. Um, for me, it should have more of a sunburst. Yeah, that's a creative choice. I'm talking about a very big technical error in the image. There's more flare on the camera left side around the person. Yeah, that's definitely a technical problem, but that's not the big problem because I can deal with the flare. Darker and warmer. Nope. That's kind of a creative choice. Wow, I'm surprised there's not more guesses here. I'll put these images up against side by side. This is a big problem. Oops, here. Yeah, this is a big problem that is easily fixed. Okay, it's easily fixed. Okay, so let me start talking about the pictures, how they were created. This image here, I didn't have to use flash. The light from coming in through the door here is natural light, and it created the shadow. And we have very rough texture here. So, the location is different. It's a different location, but similar scene, and similar enough that made the error over here very obvious. Okay, over here, this was created with a flash. The flash is right here. And one mentioned about the warmth. Yeah, this is a little bit warmer image. That was a creative choice. I warmed it up in post-processing. This one I didn't do any post-pro. I did a little bit, but not much. This is pretty much straight out of camera color image. But I don't know if you guys can see it now. Yeah, like you mentioned here, a little bit of flaring here. But there's flare over here too, but that's not the problem. My lens, the 14 to 42 is not great with starburst and flaring. The 14 to 42 lens does struggle a little bit with those. That's a technical issue with the lens, but not with the image. The image has a major problem that can be easily fixed. So let me check the chat one more time and see if you guys have any other guesses here. Okay, Roger caught it. Good job, Roger. I'm impressed. So let me show you what Roger saw. Um, yeah, the end of the tunnel is not lit all the way across. So there's some more comments here. Let me just check them real quick. Perhaps it's the light over the shoulder. No. Yeah, so Roger got it. So let's go to the scene. Whoops, this one. If you look here, the light on the left side, the light goes all the way up to the door. So the light is coming out of the door. So the light here is dark, and it gets lighter, lighter, lighter all the way up to the door. If you look at the tunnel, there's light, 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 then dark, and then light. The light is not going all the way up to the entrance of the tunnel. And that's because the flash is inside the tunnel. It's not outside the tunnel. So it created this really dark shadow all the way around here. There's a little bit of light hitting here from the natural light that was coming in, like down in here. So if I zoom in a little bit, maybe it'll be easier to see. But yeah, this is a problem. So all I have to do is move the flash back outside towards the edge of the tunnel so that when it fires, it illuminates the entire inside of the tunnel. That's where the problem is. This flaring is mostly because I was the kit lens is not great with flares and starbursts. What was I at? I was at 5.6. Um, but yeah, so good job. Awesome. Roger got it. All right. Um, anyway, so that's what I've been up to this week is helping people with their projects, doing some tutoring on Flash. Uh, and then I was teaching Flash photography, and she's like an award-winning photographer, but she doesn't know how to use a Flash, which is I shouldn't laugh. I mean, I'm not laughing. It's just surprising, right? Um, so her photography is way better than mine, but I'm really good with Flash. Normally, except for that photo I just showed you. Normally, I'm really good with Flash. But we're going back out tonight to do that tunnel picture again and make these corrections. So I will share with you next week the final images from that shoot because that shoot was to go out and experiment a little bit with Flash, different lighting, different locations to get this shadow effect. But tonight is going to be the last day that we can work on this because her project is due like in the next couple days. And so next week I'll share with you that image, the final image. And you're saying also the far entrance is half and half light wise. A little bit, it's because of the natural light coming in, I think is what you're referring to. That's throwing off the light or make creating the differences in light, I should say. Barry says, greetings from Swindon, UK, around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, a bit late. Awesome. Awesome weather. It's awesome weather here today. I think it's like 75 outside right now. Yeah, half dark, half light. Yeah, I think the natural lighting, the ambient lighting was creating that. And I'm kind of okay with that, but we'll see. Tonight we're going to go out when it's a little bit darker so that there's no ambient light or very little ambient light, and that the only light's going to be created by the flash, move it back a little bit, and then we're good. I feel like, what, off topic, are you watching Strange New World? No, I'm not. Um, it was a good show. I watched the first season and some of the second season. I think all the seasons are on YouTube now, right? Paramount has published them on YouTube. I don't know. But I haven't been watching it. Uh, I'm a big Trek fan, but I just haven't made time to watch Star Trek lately. And Pucho, I see it here. but I don't have it on my other screen yet. But it says, "Hello from New York City. How to fix vertical clipping in a histogram in post-processing. How to avoid it when shooting. Thank you for an informative video." Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean by vertical clipping. If you're talking about clipping highlights or shadows, that's just an exposure problem, right? If you're clipping highlights, just lower your exposure. You'd have to be a little bit more specific, but fix vertical clipping in a histogram. So if it's clipping on the right side, uh, that means you're overexposing the highlights and they're clipping to white. If they're clipping on the left side, you're underexposing the shadows and they're clipping completely to black. So you just have to adjust your exposure left or right, right? Meaning uh, add some exposure compensation, like +1 if you're clipping the shadows, and or do -1 if you're clipping the highlights. So, for example, the great white egret that I shot, um, I dialed in for that shot that I had earlier. I dialed in -0.7, but I have a few shots of him like this one. Let's see. Oh, like this shot here. This shot here, I dialed in -2 exposure comp, and you can see if you look at the histogram up here, I know it's really tiny, but I'm not clipping any highlights here, and I'm not worried about clipping any shadows. But if it was overexposed, then you're gonna get clipping like you see here, in the histogram and then also on the in the image. But if I bring the exposure way down, you can see I retained all of the detail without clipping. So I had to dial in, but that's because I know I've been shooting birds, for so long that when I run into a bird, depending on the color of it, if it's white, if it's dark blue, if it's brown, I have a sense of what exposure comp I need to dial in to expose the bird properly. And that's assuming I'm shooting an auto ISO, which I usually am, but I'm trying to get a feel for shooting in full manual where I'm not using auto ISO. I'm fixing the ISO, fixing the shutter speed and aperture, and then exposing the birds that way. Uh, and then I don't have to worry about exposure compensation at all. But just for me, it's faster to dial in exposure compensation than to dial in ISO. Because when I'm looking at an ISO number, I don't have a feel for if I'm over or underexposing. Whereas exposure compensation is a direct relationship, right? I know I'm underexposing and overexposing. Whereas if I'm looking at an ISO number 800, am I overexposing the shot now or am I not? It just my brain just doesn't work that fast. Um, and then vertical clipping, when the y-axis of the color channel is too high and it is above the other channels, then it seems overmodulated as opposed to the left and right white. Oh, oh. You're talking about color clipping, like colors oversaturated. Uh, well, the way I'm trying to think, I don't run into that issue very often, if ever. You get it sometimes with flowers, right? Like particularly red. Red seems to oversaturate a lot, quite often. And really, you deal with it just like any other clipping problem. It's with the exposure. So you're gonna have to underexpose the 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 whole scene so that the color red doesn't clip. right? Red is a very common color to clip, and uh, it's not completely clipped, right? Because there's other values in there that are allowing you to see the red. But yeah, you just have to underexpose a little bit overall. If you're getting clipping anywhere in the histogram, it's basically you just have to underexpose a bit. And what is that? Can you explain what explore rating or acceptance? I have no idea. I post my images on Flickr, but I don't really pay attention to a lot of things going on over there other than my own images, right? And reading the comments. I have a Flickr question. My Pelican in flight got an Explorer nod. Yeah, I don't know. I know time to time my images will go on Explorer where it's shared like on another page that seems to be popular on Flickr. And then all of a sudden you get a lot of likes, right? That happens time to time for me, but uh, I think that's what it is somebody's curating the images on another page, the Explorer page, and adding your image to that page, and that page seems to be very popular. Ironically, I've never been to that page. Uh, let me see. I know one of my images. This image got onto Explorer. Uh, so it's this one, I think, right? No, so it's not a group. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry, Darko. I don't know much. I don't know much about that part of Flickr. And so sharp a tripod. No, I was not on a tripod, but that bug was on the whatchamacallit. If you look down here, you can see a reflector. So the bug was on my car. So I was leaning against the car holding the camera like this. So I had a lot of stability kind of inherently by leaning against the car and holding it and taking the shot. And I was using flash. So flash tends to mitigate any kind of motion blur. Uh, because if you look at the EXIF is wrong. I don't know why it doesn't record flash, but I was using flash. So even though I was at 1/50th of a second, um, the flash fired. So that helped mitigate any motion blur that might happen because I'm at such a slow shutter speed. And then flash also has a really way of bringing out the textures and all of that. And this image is focus stacked. So again, you get the benefits of focus stacking, uh, which usually translates into more detail, more textures, things like that, better color saturation. So that yeah, this image had a lot going for it to be what it is. I mean, I'd rate this maybe a 7 out of 10 as far as macro images go. Maybe not even a 7, maybe a 6 out of 10 because I've seen some amazing macro images. This one is just barely a 6, in my opinion. But somehow it got onto Explore, whatever that is. And when you punch in, there is some pretty decent detail here. But the short answer is no. I was basically handheld, but I was leaning against the car, so it was pretty straightforward. Side note, Flickr's interesting, this algorithm is prepared so the exact formula is not public. Okay. And Henning says if one of your images chosen for Flickr Explorer means the system judges it to be especially engaging based on a mix of factors. Okay. Yeah. So it's an algorithm. Okay. And have asked DxO about the possibility of a program that shows the autofocus point. I missed it when birds fly past my camera. Hard to find the right one out of 10 photos where the AF spot. Yeah. Uh, the I doubt they're gonna do it because every manufacturer has their own proprietary raw image, and they'd have to go back. I mean, if they do it for one camera, they're gonna have to do it for all the cameras. So, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that they can bulk update in their database and say, "Okay, now read the AF point data from the raw file," and they can add that in. Hopefully, they do a lot of AI stuff. I bet AI could do it and bulk update the coding that does the demosaicing to find the AF point. But yeah, I doubt it. That would be tough to do. Because like I said, if they do it for one, they have to do it for them all. And David says, being explored on Flickr is a mystery to me as it does seem to randomly pick images. I had a couple of regular birdshot get explored that were not amazing. Yeah. Who knows how they get picked? Ping, she's one of our friends, mutual friends with David. She gets explored all the time. Like, feels like every other image she posts gets explored. Yeah, NX Studio. So, yeah, the NX Studio, because NX Studio was made by Nikon and it's reading the proprietary raw file, and it knows where all the data is in the raw file. So I don't know, maybe maybe DxO has a hard time finding the proprietary information that identifies the autofocus point in a raw image. I don't know, but I think it's probably going to be hard for them to do that. Okay, well, I think I'll call it here. So I want to thank everyone today for being here with me, having these conversations. I'm so sorry about the audio in the beginning. Uh, I'm glad someone texted me. I think it was Walter. Someone texted me about it. Otherwise, I would have just jibber jabbered for 2 hours with terrible audio. But you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate your support. Be sure to check out my links below to see if there's a way that you can support me through those affiliate links, donations, and memberships. It all helps a lot. And I'll be back. I don't know if I can be back on Tuesday like I normally do. We'll see. And Friday's a little bit iffy too. Oh, I got a photo job on Friday. I got something on Tuesday, so I might have to stream on days that I don't normally stream on to kind of fit it in if I can at all. I'm so sorry I missed the editing stream last week, but uh, I had a photo job or something. I can't remember what I did even Friday, but I had something that I couldn't make it. But you guys are great. Thanks for joining me, and have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. Eat healthy, exercise, and I hope to see you again soon. Oh, and just real quick, Roger said, "Did I use a flash diffuser?" Yes, I did. I used a diffuser, uh, just that little pop-out one that I've shown before. Just a simple pop-out diffuser you put on your lens. Okay, see you guys soon.